You agreed to be small, safe, and silent long before you had a choice. And it wasn't because you were weak, but because you were loyal, because you were scared, because you were trying to survive. And in this episode, we're diving into the idea of the unconscious contract. This is the silent agreement you may have made in childhood to stay invisible, pleasing, self-sacrificing, or stuck. And how that same contract is likely, very likely, running your adult life today.
You're listening to the Inquisitive Wren podcast, the show that brings you philosophical ponderings of your life from a bird's eye view. Now, here's your host, Shah.
We're going to explore childhood imprinting. People don't talk about this, and you know, it's huge. We, as a therapist, you use it a lot, you look at it a lot. So childhood imprinting, family loyalty pacts, I've brought that in because many people are very unaware. It's unconscious, again, unconscious that families make pacts. They're unspoken. Also, we'll look at the psychology of self-sabotage, and many of you know all about self-sabotage. And of course, I want to bring in neuroscience. So how neuroscience explains our resistance to change. There is a huge resistance to change. We do have a compulsion to repeat things, and how to break free through a simple contract release ritual that you can start today. I've also included a free PDF download that you can have to work on your contracts, to see, to outline, to unveil these contracts that are unconscious. They're beneath the surface. You do not know they exist, but I'm going to help you learn how to spot these contracts, the symptoms, the signs. Everybody will be very much unaware of them. Well, I say that, but you'll hear families say things like, well, we do this as a family, or, you know, I'm a part of them. Of course we do that, and that kind of thing. That's a contract. It's unconscious, but it's conscious kind of thing. So let's get started. What is an unconscious contract? An unconscious contract is a deep-seated, it's unspoken, it's an agreement that you made as a child. And some of you are already thinking, well, the only thing I agreed to as a child was to go outside, to ride my bike, to play with my baby dolls, and da-da-da-da. But it's not out of logic. You know, that's childhood play. It wasn't made out of logic. You did not have that adult logic, but it was made as a strategy for emotional survival. Children are extremely emotionally aware. I want to give a precursor to this talk as well. Some of what I'm going to say may be triggering. It may bring up things for a lot of people out there. Even as I record this, I feel an energy with it. It's an energy that is going to unleash a lot of stuff in a lot of people. So I would say this before you listen fully to the episode, make sure you're, you know, in a comfortable space and place. And if anything bothers you or triggers you, I'm going to put some links in the show notes where you can get some help, because we're diving deep. We're going to go deep. This is very important stuff. And even though some of it's talked about, a lot of it isn't. And I'm also going to delve into the spiritual side of unconscious contracts. Only a bit, only a bit. I'll have to do a very separate episode on the spirituality part. And by the way, some of you have contacted me saying, what's happened to your spirituality talks? They're combined, but I hear you, I do hear you, and I will make sure to incorporate those back in. One of my favorites, so I'm very much an old soul as such. I know this, but also In this lifetime on this earth plane, I stick to the pioneers, people like John Bowlby. He's the father of the attachment theory. And he proposed that children are biologically wired to form bonds with caregivers. Now, some of this sounds okay, well, of course, but you only know that because you've heard it in no uncertain terms through other people saying it in a different way. It was John Bowlby who really did the research on attachment theory, and that the nature of these bonds creates a blueprint. And I say this because my original Nine Peaches Therapies website talked about creating a blueprint for your life. Now that's gone away with my new website, charlewalante.com. But it creates a blueprint for future emotional regulation, trust, and self concept. So, how you see yourself, how you conceptualize who Shaw is, who Mary is, who Jane is, who Stephen is. It will inform that self concept, that image, those thoughts about you, about yourself. Bowlby wrote, the propensity to make strong emotional bonds to particular individuals is a basic component of human nature. And so we mustn't feel bad or embarrassed about liking certain members of the family more than others. It just means that you've created an emotional bond. There's something about the threads in both of you that linked and that stuck. You know, when you were in science class, some of you will remember the magnets. Do you remember they used to give you these magnets and they showed you how, magnetism, or they showed you how energy worked by using the opposite, the plus and the negative. So the positive and the negative, how they attracted and how they didn't. Bowlby wrote, the propensity to make strong emotional bonds to particular individuals is a basic component of human nature. And some of you will recognize this in, certain ways that you may find that you have particular bonds with certain members of the family. I am very aware of the people I really, really love being around in my family. And I'm very aware of the ones that I would, make sure that I wasn't around so often because they were either moaning about something or something just, turned me off about them. And I'm sure I'm the same. I'm sure that's the same for other people about me. So just because you feel a particular way about people doesn't mean they don't feel the same about you. When a child experiences conditional acceptance, that's love that depends on performance, anything conditional. So, love that depends on performance, obedience, that's a huge one, or silence, because we're bought with obedience, aren't we, in childhood, and silence. If you're quiet, I'll give you that candy that you like. If you do what I say, we'll go this place. So we learn bargaining very, very early in life. The child adapts by performing protective behaviors to preserve, protect themselves and that bond. So if an adult keeps promising things to you, if you're silent, if you're quiet, if you're obedient, if you obey, I'll give you what you want, you will become attached to that person, but it's conditional because you know that you've got to perform in a particular way in order to be accepted by them, to be around them, and to get something. It's a payoff. There's a payoff at the end. Unconditional acceptance is just the opposite. It's free flowing, loving, caring. There's no conditions involved at all. And these are the people we're usually very, very drawn to, unless there's an attachment that's formed that's conditional in a way that meets your primary needs that haven't been met elsewhere by your primary caregiver. They may unconsciously agree to suppress needs, downplay uncomfortableness or pain, or take on the emotional burden of others. Now, that's huge. If you come from a family whereby the adults were preoccupied by their own stuff, I always think my image of stuff is a box with a whole load of stuff in it. I know you're not supposed to define something using the words, but it's a load of different things in it. And it's packed and it's full and it's just stuff. You don't need most of it. Some of it you may need, but only on Wednesdays or in the autumn or, in January, or it's stuff that it's things that just there's no other place to put them but in that box. And it's stuff that belongs to other stuff. You got that part because that came with that when you got that, but you don't use that, but you don't throw it away. So it's in that stuff box. And I think it's the same with people. Mom or dad or grandparents or whoever around you may have had their stuff. Maybe there's stuff that happened in their childhood or through their parents or through their siblings, and they've held on to unconsciously, and it's stuff, and you'll see it pour out, pour out, pour out. It doesn't look familiar because you don't see it in your parents, or it looks very, very different because of certain things. And it's stuff. It's this box, and you don't know how it's connected. And as a child, it just looks like a box full of stuff. Nothing's connected. They may unconsciously agree to suppress their needs and downplay pain. Maybe they hate a particular meal, and every time you go there, they cook it. Now, I'm going to tell you a personal story. When I was young, I was allergic to fish, and my parents are from New Orleans, and so, seafood is the number one cuisine besides beignets. But see, and coffee. Oh, that strong, strong Louisiana coffee. But so every Friday, because also we grew up Catholic, I do talk about being Catholicized as such in different videos. And for me, I have a very good memory of all of that. I really do. I went to Catholic school until I graduated high school. So there was nothing, I mean, there were a couple of things, but nothing huge, nothing major. But on Fridays during Lent, and this is ironic because my dad really didn't. He went to mass, but not always. He would say to us, "You don't have to go to mass this Sunday if you don't want to." I mean, where the other family, everybody else would say, "Oh, you're going to church, you're going to church, you're going to church." And my dad was like, "If you don't want to go this Sunday, you don't have to." So it's very ironic that he would observe the Good Fridays or the Fridays during Lent, shall we say, Stations of the Cross and the whole thing. That was so depressing, the Stations of the Cross. Anyway, I digress. So on Fridays, you couldn't eat meat, so you had to eat fish. So my parents loved fried fish, catfish, all the fried stuff. But when I was younger, I had lots of allergies. I was allergic to, well, I say lots, there were. I remember being allergic to tomatoes and fish. That was it. I used to get a rash on my arm and things. And so when Fridays came round during Lent, I would stay in my room because they would be frying fish, and the house was big enough where it didn't, if I closed my door to my room, I couldn't, I didn't smell the fish, or I didn't, it didn't affect me. And so and then I was made a special meal. I was made a very different meal. I don't know, I had lots of different meals, but everybody else had fish and whatever else. But I had my special meal. So for me, that was a pain point that I felt like, oh, I can't eat what everybody else is eating. What I'm eating is just as good and lovely, but I wish I could eat what they're eating. So, but what's funny, I will tell you what happened. I just randomly, I was at Giel's in London, one of my favorite fish restaurants, and I something just said, I was with friends, and something just said, you know what? Try just a little bit of that person's fish. So I don't know why. I mean, all my life I was like, oh, fish. But I hadn't thought about it. When you're young, you just, but the tomato thing went quite quickly. Anyway, I tried it and it was absolutely fine. It was lovely. I had a little bit more, a bite full, and it was really good. But fish is very filling to me. I find it very filling. Before I knew it, two forkfuls, and I was done. But it was lovely, and I was like, I was waiting. I said, we got calamine lotion at home because when I was young, if it bothered me or if anything, they used to just lather me with calamine lotion. The smell of it today, I do have some though here. Isn't that funny? I still have calamine lotion on hand, just at the ready, just in case. But actually, I think a spider bit me recently because I had this bite on my back. It was so weird, just above my left hip. And it was like you could see it was a bite. Anyway, I put calamine lotion on it and boop, it was gone. So, well, it wasn't gone. I mean, it stopped itching. And also I used other things. But anyway, so yeah, so the fish thing went in adulthood. It probably went years before that, but so you grow out of these things. Anyway, oh my goodness, this video is going to be so long. This is where the unconscious contracts forms. So I'll give you some examples. I won't express my needs if it keeps me close to you. So you're quiet about what you really want, what you need, what you like, because you don't want to upset someone and you want to make sure you're manipulating. So this is where the condition comes in because you are making these unconscious contracts. So they're yours. Another one is I'll make myself small so you don't feel threatened. So this is when I have, oh gosh, I want to give this example, but I talk a little bit more about this in my jealousy versus envy video. And also a lot about it in an upcoming e-course. It's huge, but you'll learn about that a different time. Another one is I'll stay silent so you don't get angry. Now that's a big one. That's a really big one. Donald Winnicott, one of my absolute favorite psychoanalysts, and he was a pediatrician as well. A lot of people don't realize that. But Winnicott, the psychodynamic theory, which I'm trained in, Winnicott's all over all of that. So he expanded this concept with the false self. He talked about the false self. The false self is the persona that we build to be acceptable to caregivers. It's functional, even praised. Oh, isn't she a good girl? Oh, look at him. He's such a little man, isn't he? He can just take it. Or he's so obedient. Good boy, good boy. But it comes at a cost. The gradual abandonment of the true self. So the false self slowly erodes the true self. The true self starts to fade into the background. So much so that you have to look for it later on in life through therapy. So you hear a lot of therapists, myself included, say, let's find your true self. Who are you? This has been run away with. It's taken to new heights. I don't know if they're good heights in social media. The true self, the authentic self. Winnicott observed that when a child is not mirrored or met in their real feelings, so if you're only seeing them when they are their false self, they begin to perform what they believe is expected. And over time, this false identity becomes the contract. So this is where it gets interesting. I'll be whoever you need me to be. Just don't leave me. Now, many of you would have felt that just now. It would have been like a sword piercing right through you. And this is something that can go right up to adulthood. This is why people find themselves stuck in relationships, in jobs, in careers, in wherever they're stuck, because they've made this unconscious contract. And this could be financially as well. I won't exceed. I'll stay small. I won't exceed because I don't want to upset my siblings, my parents, my school, my whatever, whoever it is, my neighbors. These contracts are not conscious at all. They're unconscious. They're imprinted and they're shaped by fear, environment, and unmet needs. Unmet needs are huge, but they are imprinted. They're right with you. Someone once said in my early career doing hypnosis and performing hypnosis for people, um, holding hypnotherapy sessions, someone once said to me, you know, because I'm so aware of my unconscious mind, I do this and I do that. And I had to explain to them, you just stated an oxymoron. The unconscious is unconscious. So you're not aware of it. That's why you're here, so that we can uncover the unconscious. If it were conscious, you wouldn't need the unconscious. If it were conscious, you wouldn't be here. If it were conscious, okay, so you may say to yourself, why? Okay, I know that I'm doing that, but why do I keep doing it? Well, it's bigger than that. There's something else that's unconscious about it. So it gets to be very interesting work. And while these unconscious contracts once protected you, in adulthood, they often become the very thing keeping you small, keeping you stuck, and keeping you self-sabotaging. Let's talk about how the brain enforces the contract. And this will surprise you. So the brain has one job. I love it when people say they had one job. The brain has one job: to keep you alive. Your brain has to think, strategize, plan, schedule. And when not fulfilled, when not thriving and just alive, the brain is doing what it's meant to do. However, not being fulfilled, not thriving, not feeling good about yourself doesn't make for a very happy life. So some people will say, oh, you know what? It sounds nice to reach 100, but if I'm, if I can't walk, if I can't have my bodily functions, what good is it? And that's an example of your brain is keeping you alive somehow. Biology, yes, they're linked, always linked. But when not fulfilled, when you're not feeling good or thriving, you're just alive. The modern day way that people say is, are you living or are you just alive? And so when a contract is formed in childhood, especially under emotional stress, the brain encodes it as truth. And that's harrowing to know. The brain thinks, okay, that's the truth. Because you were under stress, because you didn't know what else to do, because there was no adult who could steer you in the right direction, the brain goes, oh, well, that's true. And this is reinforced by neuroplasticity. So we talked about this in several of my videos. Neuroplasticity is the repeated thought patterns where they become hardwired neural pathways. And I always refer to Hebb's law. The cells that fire together wire together. That little saying has always stayed with me. Cells that fire together wire together. And also something else that isn't talked about enough, in my opinion, and that is confirmation bias. When you unconsciously seek out situations that validate your smallness or stuckness. So you unconsciously seek them out. Oh my goodness, I've got so many examples of this in my own life, but also I see it all the time in other people. So you may find yourself in a very difficult work situation and you think, well, how did this happen? Well, there's a reason. There's a reason why it's happened. But also one other thing that, yeah, it's not overlooked, but I like to include the amygdala because it is our fear center. And a lot of this is based on fear, fear of abandonment, fear of being left. So the amygdala is constantly scanning for threats, always looking for that. And it's often mistaking visibility for danger. So if something looks a certain way, they're thinking, oh, yeah, that's danger. I'm in danger. What's it? You're in danger, girl, Molly. You're in danger. And you're not. But the result, even when opportunity knocks, you hesitate, you downplay, you self-sabotage, you procrastinate, not because you're unmotivated, not because you're stupid, because people often say, oh gosh, I'm so stupid. Why didn't I do that? It's because you're loyal to the original agreement. If you're into living with purpose, clarity, and soul, the Aligned Living newsletter is exactly what you need. I'm genuinely obsessed with creating it. Every week, I share strategies that work, drawn from close to 30 years as a therapist and soulful living being, plus powerful insights into spiritual and personal growth. You'll get access to free resources, guided meditations, discounts on events and courses, and tools to help you shift your energy, habits, and mindset, all free when you sign up. I delve into hidden dynamics that are at work in your relationships and your workplace, and you'll have exclusive access to when the episodes are released. Plus, you'll also have exclusives on cohorts and legacy memberships when they become live. I'm building this with heart and honesty, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. Head to the link in the show notes and join me today. Throw in your spirituality. Throw in that side of things, these sacred contracts you've made that you're unaware of. And that brings in a whole new element, but we'll address that in another video. The psychological roots, and I want to talk about loyalty and sabotage, because sabotage is something that people don't understand, how they mess things up, how their beliefs mess things up. I've often given this example because it's a simple one. I was once with someone who had just done their shopping and they were unpacking a crate, a small crate, 6 eggs, or it may have been 12, I can't remember. And as they were doing it, they said, "Oh gosh, I always tend to drop one." And I just turned away thinking, yeah, it's going to happen because they just proclaimed it. They sabotaged it. And what happened? They dropped an egg. And all they were doing was unloading them from the carton into the fridge, one by one. You had one job. Psychologist Dr. Franz Rupert calls this bonded sabotage, where your identity stays fused in the pain of your original story. And, we talk a lot about, oh, this person's stuck in their story. It's all they talk about is their abuse. We see this with Rebecca Luz, with Monica Lewinsky. We see, and, I bring these examples up because of the bonds. I was going to say trauma bonds, but because of those early attachment issues where people have affairs with married people or people go outside. They make an agreement somehow to please people who they see are influential, because they're afraid of being left. It goes right back. And it doesn't matter who else is involved. The child in them can only see them. It can only see them. All they can see is, I need to please this person so they don't leave me. So let's say, for example, your mother never got to pursue her dreams. Let's just say, she wants to be something, she never got to pursue her dreams. Or your father was emotionally unavailable. Or your older sibling always played the star. You may unconsciously believe, if I shine, I betray them. If I do well, they'll never love me. If I become happy, I'll lose their connection. If I become powerful, I'll be alone. They won't want to be around me. This is not irrational. It's protective. You're protecting yourself. And it's deeply rooted in attachment theory, particularly anxious and disorganized attachment, where love was what's the word? Inconsistent or conditional. It was inconsistent, though, I want to say, or conditional. But you just didn't know. It wasn't consistent. You never knew because you based the love on behavior. In therapy, we often see this in clients who can't finish their book or launch a project, or can't make up their mind about what to do with their life. They undervalue their skills. They remain in toxic relationships in work or personal relationships, or they have persistent, I'm going to use the phrase imposter syndrome, despite, I'm going to say because, I don't believe in imposter syndrome. I think it's a ridiculous phrase and it's not rooted in science. But they have this idea that they're not really who they're portraying themselves to be, despite being successful. And for me, that's something else. That really is literally just you don't feel confident. You do not feel confident in what you're doing. The contract whispers, don't rise, don't succeed. It's not safe. Stay small. It's not safe. In this segment, I want to take you through a contract release ritual. It only takes a few minutes. So find a comfortable space. And, we went through a lot of very difficult information there. So let's begin a simple, gentle ritual to begin letting go. And this is what you'll need. You'll need a journal, if you have one, or a piece of paper. By the way, you can download my self-alignment journal for free when you sign up to the newsletter. So download that if you need it. Or a piece of paper, a very quiet space, and a willingness to meet yourself without shame. So no judgment, just for now, no judgment. The first step, the very first step that you need to take is to give this contract a name. Name the contract. It'll come to you. It could be one word. I don't want to give you examples because it needs to come from you. Once you've named the contract, and you can put this on hold and come back to it until you're satisfied with the name, I want you to write, the unconscious contract I made was, and I'll give an example of this. For example, to stay small so others could feel okay around me. That's an unconscious contract. So take some time and write, the unconscious contract I made was. Step 2, is to acknowledge the purpose. So right now, I want you to write, this contract helped me survive by, for example, this contract helped me to survive by keeping me connected to my parents' love, or making my big brother feel useful and helpful. Don't worry, the download in the show notes will have a lot of this in it. So you can work on it at your leisure. Step 3 is to recognize the cost of this unconscious contract. So now I need you to write, but now this contract is costing me, for example, but now this contract is costing me my voice, my peace, and my joy. Really take time on step 3. This is where you need to outline everything that's missing from your life because this unconscious contract is costing you a lot. Write as much and as long as you need to. And step 4 is to choose to release it. Now, I say choose because it's your choice. You may not be ready to let this go. The idea of change can evoke fear in so many people. And that's why change isn't always easy. So I say choose to release it when you're ready. So write or speak it out. I thank this contract for what it gave me. But I now release it with love. I choose freedom. I choose expansion. I choose to belong to myself. I let go of fear. And I let go of contraction. I expand. Now, whatever you do with this contract is up to you. You could have a little sacred ritual where you burn the paper safely. If you have an outdoor space, that's a good space or place to do it. Or a lot of people like to watch paper dissolve into water. So it's quite satisfying. You see the ink dissolve, you see everything dissolve. Or you can tear it up, you can bury it, you can, it symbolizes release. Whatever you choose to do, you could flush it down the loo. Do whatever you feel, just dispose of it safely. There's no need to hold on to it. And if you're feeling at any time that you don't wish to let it go, then you've got to do a bit more work. So you have to keep doing this exercise until you find that you are actually ready to get rid of it. If you'd like support in doing this more deeply, I've created a contract release hypnosis session. It's a guided audio journey to assess, to understand, and to release unconscious agreements from the mind and the body. You can find it linked in the show notes or on my website. As we wrap up, know that you didn't choose to dim your light. It wasn't a choice. It was something you thought you had to do. But you can choose to reclaim it. You are not the agreements that you made when you were tiny, small, and needing love, when you were scared. You are not bound to a version of yourself you no longer resonate with and is no longer needed in your life. Every moment of clarity is a chance to rewire your life. And think about rewiring as a circuitry where your brain and your body need to be rejuvenated, rebooted, restarted. at certain times of your life. This is why we have those seasons in our lives. This is just one of them. Whether it's coaching, therapy, regression therapy, or deep spiritual healing. You're allowed to change your story, and you are safe to grow beyond the contract. The other thing is you may find that you have made several unconscious contracts with yourself without choice because you didn't know, you didn't have the wherewithal to know back then as a child, and that's okay. There are many things about our childhoods that we love, but these unconscious contracts seep into our daily lives on an unconscious basis and uncontrollable basis because you never know when they're going to be triggered off. So take your time, do the exercise that we just did several times if you need to. And if you need to record yourself doing them, do. It may help, but make sure you delete the recording because the whole idea is to get rid of these contracts, to release them. Some people like to speak things out. If you'd like to learn more about my work on the unconscious contracts, I've created a contract release hypnosis session that I think will be really helpful. It's a guided audio journey. Access to understand and to release unconscious agreements from the mind and body. Thanks for tuning in today. I trust that you will find this useful. However, I'd love to know directly from you. Did you find it useful? How did you find the visualization, the relaxation part? And are you feeling a bit better now about letting that unconscious contract or contracts go, about actively releasing them? So let me know in the comments. In the meantime, if you want to know more, I do deep dives into forensic psychology, hidden dynamics, group dynamics at work, not just at work, where you're working, the organization, but it's a play on words. At work, what's at work? Where are the hidden dynamics in your situation, in relationships, in friendships, in family relationships, all of those aspects of our lives. And if you're fascinated, like I am, by when things kind of just go wrong, but how they were right or could have been right, it's a fascinating, for me, interest of mine. And that's why I choose groups, because I love music and they are ripe with group dynamics and organizations. So have a look. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you follow. If you become a subscriber, you get special episodes, bonus episodes that cover many different areas and also some free visualizations and relaxations that people have found very helpful. And of course, you can subscribe to the newsletter to get weekly insights, discounts on events and resources. Look out for announcements on webinars and other courses. And of course, I offer the strategy session, which is a 90-minute session to uncover all of what is hidden around your situation at work. And this is a forensic deep dive. The link is in the description. Have a look, see if it's for you. It's by application only. If you make an application, I will reply within 48 hours. In the meantime, see you on the next one.